I'm in Illustrator on the iPad and I'm going to talk about making a repeat pattern. So what I have here is a collection of motifs. I'm just tapping on these so that you can see that some of them are in groups and others are just sort of individual little shapes here like that. To make a repeat pattern out of these, I'm going to select them all, just marquee selecting them with my selection tool, and then I'll go to the right-hand side. The menu here at the very bottom is the repeat menu, and if I choose grid, we can see Illustrator has made a nice grid repeat pattern out of these motifs. Now, I've talked about this in an earlier video, but the handles that we have here around the repeat allow you to make the area smaller or larger, as this large white handle on the right hand side does. Same here with the handle on the bottom edge. So we can change the area of the repeat. The corner handles allow you to scale, and that does this while constraining the scaling so that it doesn't get stretched or squeezed. And then the handles at the top here, the one with the little arrows, I'm actually able to change the spacing between the individual tiles, and you can see the amount of space is highlighted with this pink bar. So when I get close to seeing this pink bar just turn into a hairline, that means there's no space between the tiles. And when I just keep going, now we're getting sort of an overlap between the tiles. And this is a big difference between the repeats feature that is here on the iPad and also on the desktop in Illustrator. This is a big difference between the repeats feature and the pattern editing mode feature, which is only on the desktop in Illustrator. Now I'm going to use the handle on the left-hand side to sort of squeeze up these tiles and overlap them a little bit just to tighten up the spacing in this pattern. Now you can do that by hand using the handles, but you can also go to the Properties panel, and down at the bottom under Grid Repeat, you can see on the left and the right, we have these indicators that are showing how much spacing is occurring now. And you can do this numerically just by tapping there and typing in a number. So these are overlapping on the vertical and the horizontal by somewhere in the neighborhood of a ½ inch. Next, we have the grid type. So I'm going to choose for this the third option, which is a half drop repeat. I just happen to like the way that half drop repeat looks for this particular pattern. I'm not going to use flip row or flip column, but just to show you these options, you can turn them off and on and see something different going on in your pattern. Okay, and I'll close the Properties panel. And now let's just work with the spacing using the top handle. I'm going to kind of close up a little of the spacing. Then I'm going to use the side handle and close up a little spacing vertically here in this pattern. All right, now let's look at editing within the pattern. So if I just zoom in here and use my selection arrow and select the pattern first of all, and then double tap on one motif, we can see I've got one motif selected. It's got the bounding box with all the handles around it, but you can also see a tall rectangle. That rectangle, that blue rectangle, is outlining the size of that tile. Now, because of the area of the pattern, half of it's getting cut off. So I'm going to move over instead. First, I'm just going to deselect by double tapping on the barrel of my Apple Pencil. Then I'm going to tap to select this pattern and then double tap on another motif. And this one I can see is within the area of the repeat here, and the repeat tile is outlined in blue. When you've sort of double tapped your way inside of this repeat pattern, you're able to do some editing here. Now, if I move this motif to the right, you're going to see the size of the tile grows. So we're making the tile sort of wider horizontally. So this is a big difference between the repeat feature and pattern editing mode. In pattern editing mode in Illustrator on the desktop, you can set the size of the tile yourself. In the repeat feature, the size of the art determines the size of the tile, and it updates automatically as you move the art. So if I move this back in, I can sort of restore that original narrow rectangle as my repeat size. All right, so I've zoomed in so we can talk about editing within this repeat tile. So currently we can see the outline of the repeat tile and the group that I have selected within the repeat. So editing inside of a repeat is very much like using isolation mode on the desktop. If I want to select one of these pink flowers, I can go over here and tap on it. These are just individual objects that I'm tapping on right now. And of course, any of these that I want to edit, I can just by rotating, doing simple transformations. And you can see that those edits are happening throughout the pattern. So in every tile, all of these edits that I'm making are just currently updating. And if I just tap on this other individual motif here, we can see this is a group with leaves and lines and a lot of different objects contained within. So if I want to have access to one of the individual leaves within this group, I need to double tap and then I can select a leaf like that. Or I can go over on the left side and double tap here to get one of these leaves. And then I'm able to edit within the group of this motif. So very much like working in isolation mode on the desktop. You just have to know that when you're working in a pattern, if you move or make any transformations that go outside the bounds of the tile, you're going to change the spacing between the tiles. All right, so I'm going to tap in an empty space just to deselect that. Then again, I'm going to tap on another motif just to sort of activate isolation mode, being able to see the outline of the tile. And now I can add a few more motifs. I'm going to do this using my rectangle tool, just kind of to put some markers down. Right now, the motif that I have doesn't have a single color because there are groups within. So let me go ahead, get my selection tool and select this pink leaf right here. Then I can go and get my rectangle tool and draw a rectangle. So just pretending that this is another motif that I'm adding into this repeat, and we can see that it's duplicated everywhere. Now that I have it selected, I'm going to change its color. So I'll go over to the fill color here and just choose another color so it kind of stands out against everything else. Go back to my rectangle tool and I'll add another one and another one. And this is just sort of giving me ways that I can sort of view the pattern, the spacing between things, and sort of put some markers down that later I'll be able to change into leaves or motifs that actually work with this pattern. Now that I've done that, I'll just deselect by tapping somewhere else on my artboard. It looks like I tapped one too many times and I accidentally moved a handle. So I'm going to undo that. And now we're back to where I left off there. All right, so this is kind of an updated pattern with some rectangles that are going to need to be changed into motifs. But what I want to show you how to do now is how to make a pattern fill swatch out of this. And to do this, we're going to move over to Illustrator on the desktop. Okay, so here I am in Adobe Illustrator on the desktop, and I can see repeat test. This is the file that I've been working on. So I'm going to go ahead and open this. And I'm just going to not worry about color management for the moment. And we can see I just drew a few little elements that I can use as extra motifs when I make this into a pattern fill swatch. Now, what I'm going to do, rather than working on this file, this is a cloud-based file you can see. So anytime that you create something on your iPad in Illustrator, it will show up in your cloud documents in Illustrator on the desktop. You don't have to do any exporting or anything like that. It's really great. But any changes you make here will affect the file. They will be automatically saved because this is a cloud document and I may not want to alter this file just yet. So what I'm going to do is just marquee with my selection arrow here the little motifs plus this field of pattern, the repeat. And then I'm going to copy it to my clipboard, Command or Control C, and I'm going to open up a new document. Really doesn't matter what size. Mainly, I just want to make sure this is an RGB document since that's where I'm working right now in RGB mode. And then I'll paste, Command or Control V to paste the artwork in there. Next, to make this into a pattern fill swatch, I'm going to have to use pattern editing mode, and I want just a single unit of this pattern. So we can see if I select this, this is the repeats feature that we have on the iPad and now on the desktop in Illustrator 2021. And what I want to do is get the single repeat unit out of this pattern. So what I'm going to do is just hold down on Option or Alt and just drag out a copy. So I've saved a little repeat off to the side, and then I'm going to go and select this and go up to the object menu, and this is where these menus are. So we've got our pattern maker, pattern mode, and then right here is repeat. So this is the repeats feature, and I'm going to go ahead and choose release here, and as you can see, we now have a single repeating unit of the pattern. And I'll bring my little extras that I drew on the iPad over here so they're ready to use. And now I'll zoom in. So the first thing I want to do is go ahead and I'm just going to group all of these. The shortcut is Command or Control G to group. And then select them, go back up to the object menu and choose pattern. So now this is going to open up pattern editing mode. And if I choose make, we can see Illustrator says the pattern has been added to the swatches panel. I'll click OK. And if I zoom out a little bit, we can see there's a repeating pattern happening. Now we have to make a few adjustments. First, just so I don't have to look at the dark canvas and the white artboard, I'm going to go up to the View menu and choose Hide Artboards. This will make my view a little clearer. And then remember, this pattern was a half drop repeat. So if I go over here to the pattern options panel, we can see currently it's set to grid. That's just the default. So I'm going to go ahead and move this into brick by column. That's the half drop. And then the next thing we have to do is close up the spacing between this. So remember, on the iPad, these tiles were overlapping by something like a ½ inch on the horizontal and the vertical. So we're going to have to make that adjustment. Now, right now, it looks like I've got pixels as my unit of measure. So I'm going to go ahead and change that by going over to my Properties panel. With nothing selected, I can see my document unit of measure here is pixels. I want to change this to inches. And now we can see in the Pattern Options panel, the width is 7.38 and the height is 9.75. So if I want to shave off something like a ½ inch here, I can just make this 9.25 inches. And then over here, I can make this, let's try 6.875. At least we're kind of getting in the ballpark there. It might not be exact, but it's pretty good. And by the way, these two boxes here, these two check boxes, Size Tile to Art and Move Tile with Art, make sure those are unchecked because actually these two checkboxes will sort of make this pattern behave more like the repeats feature, where sizing the tile to art means that, you know, when you make your art bigger, when you move it around, the tile size is going to grow or shrink with the art. We don't want that. Here in pattern editing mode, it's nice to be able to determine the width and height of your tile by the numbers. And because that's so often when we're working with patterns, we really want to know exactly the size of the tile, whether it divides into the screen that we're using and that sort of thing when it comes to printing. And if you want to see more copies, you can go down here to the bottom of this panel. It's currently set to 3 by 3. If we set it to 7 by 7, for example, then you can kind of back out and see a whole field of the pattern and get a chance to squint and make sure you like the balance of everything. So when you increase the number of copies, you'll have more artwork to look at, which is a good thing, but you'll also potentially slow down Illustrator a little bit. So if you're noticing slow performance in pattern editing mode, just go back here to copies and reduce the number of copies, and you'll probably see that things speed up a bit. To make adjustments, you can also go up to the Pattern Tile tool at the top left of the Pattern Options panel, and then you get these bounding box handles so you can kind of make adjustments by eye this way. Then you just click on that button again to turn it off. You can also go down to the bottom and check and uncheck show tile edge. That allows you to just kind of look at everything without that tile boundary there. All right, now that we've made some adjustments, I'm going to go ahead and save and exit, just checking done at the top bar. And now we're back out on our artboard. And I can just zoom out here, go get a rectangle, and then let me close the properties panel. I'll go here. This is the new pattern swatch that we created. I've got my fill active, and if I click on this, now we can see that pattern as a fill swatch. So this is great. Now we've gone from starting out working on the iPad to moving over into Illustrator on the desktop and creating a pattern fill swatch that we can use in all of our artwork. Now to look and see what we've got here, I'm just going to go ahead and grab this pattern fill swatch and drag it directly to the artboard. And let me zoom in here. And now if I look at this in outline mode, Command or Control Y, we can see this boundary that's happening here. There's a rectangle here. This is actually the repeat boundary. That means that rectangle will make this repeat happen in a grid formation. So yes, this began as a half drop repeat, but when you create a pattern fill swatch in Illustrator, Illustrator has to translate that from a half drop repeat into a grid repeat. So this rectangle here represents a grid repeat. In fact, if I just sort of went here and did a quick little tiling out, you can see when I am able to line up those little edges there, maybe not perfectly, but you can see that the repeat is seamless. I'll do the same here. I'm just using Option or Alt, and I'm holding Shift to sort of drag a copy that's perfectly aligned, constraining my drag there. And so you can see that's creating a seamless repeat. Let me go back using Command or Control Y to look at this in preview mode, and there it is. It's a seamless repeat. All right, I'll close this panel here so we can really see that better. Now what I want to do is replace all of these little rectangles here, the bright green, yellow rectangles in our pattern. And so first I'm going to go over to these motifs and just make sure that they're all grouped. And I see that they are. Oops, wait, this one is not. Let me go ahead and make a group out of that. So this is Command or Control G to group those, the leaf and the stem together. And let's see, this one is already grouped. Once these are grouped, I'm going to go ahead and take all of them and group them again. So now they're all in a single group. And that's because sometimes pattern editing mode will ungroup your motifs. And since we have a lot of pieces and parts here, I don't want that to happen. They're going to ungroup by one level, and then at least I'll have the individual groups here. All right, so let me grab that and Command or Control C to copy it to my clipboard. Now to edit the pattern, I want to go here into my swatches panel and find that pattern. Make sure nothing is selected so we're not applying it when I click. And then I'm going to go over to the swatch and double click. This launches me back into pattern editing mode, opens up that pattern so it's ready for editing. I'm zooming out a little bit here. And then I'm going to Command or Control V to paste. And so I've pasted these little leaves in here, and let's see, are they still in a group? Yes, they're still in a group. So I think that happens, that ungrouping happens actually when you first make the pattern, but this copying and pasting doesn't seem to be an issue here. All right, so what I'm going to do is ungroup so I have access to the individual pieces here, and then I can sort of move them into place. I don't know where they go. I haven't really tried this out, so this might be a little hit or miss here. So let me go ahead and just throw some of these around, and I'll go and start deleting the rectangles so that I can see where I might need. So I tried to select that one, but clearly that's not actual artwork. If I go into Command or Control Y, I can see where these rectangles are. There's one here, and there's one here, and there's one here, and I think I've gotten all of them. Now I can distribute some of these motifs here. And maybe I'll just speed up so you don't have to watch me going through every last little adjustment here. And then I can zoom out to get a better look at this. Just speeding everything up here. Okay. I'll turn off the tile edge so I can look at this. All right, so certainly there are things that I would do if I had a little bit more time, but I don't want to make you wait for me to go through all of the little adjustments. You know how it is. But let's say we've got things pretty much the way we want them. Go up to the top bar, click on done, and now I'm back out to my artboard. And look, that rectangle that I originally applied the pattern to now has the updated pattern fill swatch applied to it. And I can see I've got a little more work to do. But I hope this tutorial has been helpful. It's a long one, but there is a lot going on in this process, from moving from an iPad pattern into Illustrator on the desktop and being able to make something that you can work with versatilely here by working with it in pattern editing mode and creating a pattern fill swatch out of it. So if that's been helpful to you, I'm so glad. Please go ahead and subscribe to my YouTube channel and you'll know when my next tutorial is out. My name is Laura Coyle. I teach Adobe Illustrator and I thank you for watching.